Hi, good evening, 7:15. And we're finally finishing this Maimon of Shoresh Mitzvas. The idea of teaching a Maimon from the Rebbe in 5 classes, in a way, defeats the purpose of these classes, is so to get through them more quickly, more concisely. But you know what? The Maimon leads. This Maimon needed 5 classes. The first class introduced us to the question of the 2 crowns versus the 3 crowns, and concluded that of course there are 3 crowns, but the Eibishter gave us only 2. The crown of Naseh and the crown of Nishma the Eibishter gave us. And the Rebbe explained that the crown of Naseh is enhanced because of Akdamas Naseh the Nishma, and the crown of Nishma is enhanced because of Akdamas Naseh the Nishma, but the crown of Akdamas Naseh the Nishma itself, the Eibishter kept it for himself. And then of course the Rebbe connected it to our Shoresh Dvarim Ha'olam Oimet. The Ksarim are the Kiyum Ha'olam. These 3 crowns, which are connected to Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim, are Kiyum Ha'olam. The world exists because of the Shoresh Ksadim of Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim, which I guess on some level would be Nasa v'Nishma, and Akdomas Nasa v'Nishma. I'll just leave it at that. And the Rebbe, of course, added the Medrash that Rashi brings in Chumash on the word Yom HaShishi, that the world, Eretz Yarav HaShakata, the world was in a precarious condition and a conditional circumstance until Yidden accepted the Torah at Har Sinai. Until then, as the Chazal say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a t'nai with the world. If the Yidden are going to accept the Torah Mutiv, it's good. And if the Yidden not accept the Torah, then the world is going to disappear. And of course, the way you understand it in Hasidus, if the world would disappear, time would disappear. And if time would disappear, it would be that there never was a world. So the world is not real until Yidden say, accept the Torah. So Yidden's accepting the Torah and saying Nasa v'Nishma, which is 3 crowns. And these 3 crowns are Nishma, Nasa, and Akdamas Nasa v'Nishma, that on some level are connected to Torah, Gemilas Chasadim, and Avodah. This is Kiyum Ha'olam. So these 2 Maimorei Chazal, the Medrash says the Mishnah says Ashlosh Dvarim Ha'olam, and the Medrash that says Eretz Yarav HaShakata, the world of security, the Eibishter gave the Torah, are interconnected. Through the Torah, the world becomes real and has a Kiyum, and the Torah specifically is 3 inyanim: Nishma, Nas, and Akdamas Nas and Nishma, which is also Torah, Gemilas Chasadim, and Avodah. Now, how does that tie into Yosher, Igulim, and Atzmos? I don't think it works. Yosher, Igulim, and Atzmos, especially the way we learned it in this Maimed, that Yosher is Helam, really, and Igulim is any kind of Gili Elikus. So, are those 3 also going to work? Is Yosher, Igulim, and Atzmos going to align with Torah, Gemilas Chasadim, and Avodah, like Nishma, Nas, and Akdamas Nas and Nishma? The Rebbe certainly gives no indication of this. And I am not going to suggest it, even though I just did suggest it. And we're going to begin to it. Okay, now the key is this idea that we looked yesterday, right? There's Yoshin, that there's Igulim, and then there's Atzmos. Atzmos is Baal HaRotzen, higher than any Rotzen, as we discussed in the Shir yesterday. Higher than any Rotzen, where you b'min nimlech b'nishvesei mishal tzadikim yisrael all over machshava yidna alom Atzmos and Hus. And as the Rebbe said, and by the Eibishter, there's also you from Bechira, the transition from the B'min Nimlach to the Ratzon Al-Muchat is a choice. It's not a hechrech, it's not a personality by the Eibishter. And the Rebbe said to us that the access, the key to Atzmas Ein Seif, as it relates to Neshamas Yisrael, is the beater of the Nefesh HaBahamis. Because the beater of the Nefesh HaBahamis is Mesiris Nefesh HaMiti, as he called it in yesterday's class, because that's not Mili Aratzen, that's Bittul Aratzen. Right? This is yesterday's conversation. So the Rebbe says, with all the information that we just summarized, which is a review really, of everything we learned in this Maimer in the last few days, Yesh Lavaya Ha'inyan, the Gimel Ksarim, we now can explore the concept that even though in the Gemara, this mentions only 2 Ksarim, in the Medrash there's 3 Ksarim. There's another diak in the Medrash that I was going to say soon, that the Ksarim come from the Malachim. The Gemara also mentions the Malachi Hashanah, but the Rebbe is going to make an issue of the fact that it comes to Malach. There's obviously the two crowns that the king puts on the heads of his sons, which is the two psarim that I mentioned in the Gemara. These are the two crowns. One is against Nasa, and one is against Nishma. We got these two crowns not just because we said Nasa and Nishma, because we were magd in Nasa and Nishma, because the Nishma that comes after Nasa is a different Nishma than everyone who comes before Nasa. And the Nasa, when it comes before Nishma, is a different Nasa than every Nasa which comes after Nishma. And the Rebbe said in the very beginning of this Maimon, it says the Rebbe Yesh Negama Keser Akimah, there's the third crown, Shinat Lamelech and Asim B'Reish. The king takes it, and he puts it on his own head. Shu Keneged the Inyan Dak Dobbas Nasa Nishma. This is what comes Dak Dobba before putting Nasa before Nishma. And before you get haskalatic and philosophical and involved, just think about that. Yidden gave the Eibush to something, or Yidden did something which caused something to be created. And the Eibush says, "This I'm keeping. I'm keeping for myself." David Nachshon, tells a story about a Sefer Torah, right? That he wrote a Sefer Torah for the tanks, and the Rebbe asked to keep it. He wanted to keep it by himself, ultimately. And I'm sure that's not the only case where somebody brought something and the Rebbe said, I want to keep this. The Yidden's Hakdamas Nasal and Nishma create what the Rebbe called earlier in the Maimon 3 Makifim. And as the Rebbe said earlier in the Maimon, the 3 Makifim are the basis for Kiyam Elam. And two of those Makifim crowns Yidden with. And one of those Makifim says, Dos Yechalt Mazich. In other words, before you learn this, just the hair, but das mean the Yidden maps guitar, the Yidden did something, and the Eibush says this I'm keeping. Das halt er for sich. The Rebbe explains the Askola Shabadavar, but in the Pshat HaZoi. The Agdom mas Nasal Nishma when you nabit Labal Ratzon Dafke. That the saying, the aspect of the Agdom mas Nasal Nishma, not the Nishma, even when it comes after the Nasa, not the Nasa, even though it comes before the Nishma. But the idea of Akdama, this is the bittul to Atzmos, which is higher than all of the Tainis, including Batsna Muchad Batsmus, as we discussed yesterday in the Maimed. This reaches in Madrega Bchira, right? The idea of the Minimlach is the same Shal Tzadikim. Sheshom Magas Avedesa Mesiras Nefesh, which is touched, which we reach, which we reveal, which we access through the service of Mesiras Nefesh. What is the service of Mesiras Nefesh? Bidid the Nefesh HaBahamis. When the Nefesh Shalkis is misfabish to Nevada, the Nefesh HaBahamis, until the Nefesh HaBahamis is Sarla, Min HaMeitz, and the Nefesh HaBahamis doesn't want to be a Behema. Because when the Nefesh HaBahamis doesn't want to be a Behema, this is Ishabche of changing her life, which is the true Indian of Mesiras Nefesh. She became Atzmos that it comes from Atzmos and Hul to Shom Mishrash the Shom Yisrael Kanal Siv Zayin, where Yidna Ruda as we discussed in yesterday's one. It's a move on which it makes us understand that even though the third Kesed Eibishter keeps, but the third Kesed is ours. This third crown has a connection to us, to Yidden. The Yiddish avoided, the Yiddish service, and their Mesiras Nefesh, true bittul. The Mesiras Haratzon in She'egdimu Nasal Nishma. When Yidden said Nasal before Nishma, the implication is that it's an avodah Satshuva. It's an avodah Bidur Nefesh HaBahamis. Never doesn't explain how Akdomas Nasal Nishma is the Bidur Nefesh HaBahamis. But he says it's the same meaning. It's true. Mesiras Haratzon, which reaches out to the Even the Medrash talks about the Malachim, and frankly, so does the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Bo Malachi Asharis," right? They call Ya Malachim, we want to the Malachim. The Rebbe don't get this at all. Arizei Kuba told me that the Malachim bring these crowns, that they have access to these crowns, that they created these crowns, they bring these crowns. It's all about Yidin Shenem, as it says in the pasuk in the Chazal. Malachim cannot sing, cannot serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Jewish people sing Lamata Shenem, as the pasuk says, they sing together, the stars of the morning. And it says in Chazal, this goes in Yisrael, this is Rashi, behold, and only that's what the Malachim sing. Bnei Elokim goes on the Malachim. And by the way, there's a sefer called the Rogat Shavim. And in the Sefer, there's Kama Vakama Sipurim. One of the Sipurim is that the Rogatchover is davened very early. Somebody wants to ask the Rogatchover why he's medactic davened so early, and the Rogatchover said because the Gemara says that the Malachim can't say Shira until Yidden do. So he doesn't want to hold the Malachim. He davens early so the Malachim can say Shira after him. Avort says that Rebbe V'chein Kesser Yitnu L'cha Yidden also say Kesser. And we say that Kesser Yitnu L'cha Malachim, the Malachim, when they give the Eibush Ksadim that are Hameni Maila, it's connected to the Amcha Yisrael Kutzimat. The collection of Yidden down here set up the Malachim Hameni Maila and giving the Eibush to the Kesser. Even though Malachim give the Eibush to the Kesser. And the Neshama Yisrael give the Eibush to the Kesser. The primary Kesser which the Eibush gets from Yidden. I want you to know, if you go to my website, InsideChasidus.org, I have a Shiurim on Tefillah. It's one of the things that I work hard on, that I obsess over, that I have a special Gishmak. So I used to give random Shiurim on Tefillah, not going in order, and but I have Shiurim on Kaddish, Kedusha. I have Shiurim on Kedusha that I gave years ago with Flatbush by Rabbi Paltiel of the England. In the Shiurim on Kedusha, of course, I researched it. So, of course, I dealt with the question of Nakdishach or Naritzach or Kesser. And what I found was the debate, in the Snagdim, we say Naritzach. In the Kaddish, is Shimcha, we say Nakdishach. And what the Eskum Dois, the debate was that in earlier times, everybody said Kesser. In later times, it was changed from Kesser to Naritzach. Why? Because it's considered Yuhara to think that you're giving Eibush to the Kesser. If you look at it, Amen Gon, in all of the Kedushas, he says Kesser, Shachris, Musaf, always Kesser, weekday, Shabbos. It seems that everybody used to say Kesser, then later there was an idea that you shouldn't say Kesser because you're not holy by the Kesser, so we say Nakdisha. Nakdisha doesn't mean we are being Makadosh Eibush, but we will be Makadosh. Shabbos we say Kesef. The Misnagdim screens that even Shabbos we should say Kesef. And again, the way I understood it at the time, I'm telling you something from memory, which is probably 7 or 8 years old, that the Machlokes was whether we're right to give the Eibush to the Kesef now, we're able to be Makadosh the Eibush now, or typically say we used to do it, or the Malachim are doing. Here the Rebbe says, what's the pshat of saying Kesef Yitnu L'cha, that the Ikir is Yitnu. The Rebbe, so Malachim give the Eibush to Ksarim, and Yidden give the Eibush to Ksarim, but the Ikir is Yidden. You, with the Pshat, is Abimach, and his Bayalel, we discussed before, the Hefesh Ben Neshamas and Malachim, the separate souls from angels. Then on the one hand, Malachim, Shosh, Mebechinas, Hadiv, Mebechinas, Metzias. Shenk, and Neshamas, Mitzvus, Mebechinas, Deges, Belakus, Neshamas, Ahai, the Malachim, Neshamas, Machshav. They're Lakus, right? The Lakus, Shinas, and Nivri, and Malachim are Divra, and Metzias. On the other hand, Aval Yidach, and Neshamas, Virid, souls down here are lower than Malachim, conscious. Because Advekes, Belakus, even Mechinas Vekas now Lemis, and the Shama in this world, there's still Davak in Alakus, because it's itself a Lakus, but it doesn't even have its own Vekas, it's a hidden Vekas. Mashenkin HaMalachim, even though Malachim don't have Vekas, but at least they have Bittul. Oim Dim Lamayla, Betachas HaBittul, they stand in a Bittul, Achiyachalem Revinish Baiki, Lemis and Vinish Baiki is Vekas. And the Shamas down here have what's called Vekas Nea Lemis, they're bottled at Eibush and they don't know it. Malachim don't have Vekas, but they have Bittul, but the Bittul is conscious. So there's two sides. On the one hand, Neshamas are higher than Malachim. On the other hand, Malachim are higher than Neshamas. In theory, Neshamas are higher than Malachim, but in reality, Malachim are higher than Neshamas. V'lachein, and therefore, Inyan Agnomis, Naisel and Nishma, Kafishahu, Eitzel b'nei Yisrael Lamata, when Yidden serve Hashem down here in this world, which of course is where the action is, down here. And they say Nasa before Nishma, and as a result, they create 3 crowns. Kosher Imam Malachim, and it has to be connected to the Malachim. He's not saying it, but it's connected to the Malach. He's not saying it because they're higher than Malach. It's connected to the Malachim because down here the Milo hidden is hidden. The Malachim help you here. The Rebbe brings from the Gemara Kamayim, as it says in the Gemara Bishah, Sheikh Dim Yisrael Nasol and Nishma. Yidden said Nasol before Nishma. Yortas Nabaskal the Omra, the voice came out from heaven and said, Migil B'nei Razeh, who revealed to my children this secret of Agdimu B'Maichel Udnaichu to say Nasol before Nishma. Shemalachi Hasharet Mishtam Shembei that Malachim you. Says the Rebbe Hainu, what does this prove? She'inyan Zed, the idea of Nasav and Nishma, Nizgala Eitzel B'nei Yisrael Al Yedei HaMalachim. Malachim bring out of Yidden the in of Nasa v'Nishma. On the Lashon HaGemara, it's mashma the Malachi Yashar who say Nasa v'Nishma, and we're imitating them. The way the Rebbe explains it is, Yidden need Malachim to inspire in them Nasa v'Nishma, but when Yidden are inspired to say Nasa v'Nishma, it's more theirs than it is the Malachim. Avazal ba'efin sham Malachim Megalim es Inyan. Malachim are simply revealing it's a Inyan. Sheyeshle Eitzel Neshama is not the Yidden that didn't have by themselves. Mitzat Shoresh Mitzvas Hatefilla. So me gila lebonai rozeh shemalachi yashar mishtamshim bo ilochoy doesn't mean malachi yashar to say nasa v'nishma. Malachi yashar mishtamshim, but they serve in helping Yidden reveal the inyan of nasa v'nishma by themselves. But I don't know. So but mele kumtay say malachim taka have to be involved in the kshadim, because down here the neshama is in a state of hell, and lamayla the neshama is higher than the mal. So the malachim bring us the three kshadim, but they're bringing us three kshadim that are really ours, because our shadish is high. And maybe she gives it back to us. But it keeps on for himself. But to be honest, I don't think Yid is going to complain if the Eibusha says, the Yid gives Eibusha matana, Hashem says, I'm keeping it. That would be the greatest gift Hashem could do us is to keep our matana, like the halacha is by another mechashuv, that another mechashuv, a woman gives him, a matbeya, and he says to her, Arei atma v'deshes li, by the fact that I'm a kav of human being, she's mukadeshus. The greatest zechus the Rebbe should give us is that he should take something. But the Rebbe explains it up in Pnimius. Omnam keser zeh shaboy de hagdamas nasa l'nishma. Yidden create these three crowns by hagdamas nasa l'nishma. The malachim are involved because of the way it plays out. The nishtalshlus nishamas are higher, nishamas are lower. And we said nasa hagdamas nasa l'nishma. So three crowns are created. It's coming from us. The malachim are involved, and the Eibush keeps one for himself. Why? This crown, which is not based on nishma, it's not based on nas, it's based on akdamas nasa nishma. Hashem decides to keep. Shubit lebalaratz, the bittul to the balaratz, which is of course atzmos, because balaratz doesn't mean a leisaratz, even though that's what it says in the Maimon. Balaratz means even as namuchel batz musay. What the Rebbe called the madrega b'chira. Not like Kodesh Baruch Hu la'atma Eibush keeps for himself. As it says in the pasuk in the Medrash or the Gemara about Torah Shartale Imid of Knesset Yisrael. Havos, why does the Eibush feel entitled to keep this kesed? In other words, two ways to look at it. One is Hashem took it. The other is Hashem is entitled to it. When Hashem took it, it's wonderful. Hashem is entitled to it. Why? It's our crowd. So he explains Yisrael, the whole possibility by a Yid to be bottled about Haratzon, Mesiras Nefesh be'emet, which is bittul, basically Mesiras Haratzon, is mushed by Yid in their etzem, is mitzat shosha ba'atzmas, because he's with the Eibush Neval Haratzon. And he repeats the same L'shein of yesterday, Shebehem Nimlachim. V'yodam Moisach Latas Haratzon Chulak Anal Sivzai. But b'yesam b'shar sham ba'atzmas, whereas this power in the neshama to be the b'minim lachmanish v'seim shal tzadikim. This power in the neshama to be mesen nefesh be'emes mesinas haratz by being involved in nefesh habahamis. This power of atmas on neshama, those you magdim nasa l'nishma, is because we're mushashanat. So we have yesib b'shashim ba'atmas of the yidis and atmas einam be'bechinas metzias kal, not entities unto ourselves. Shadei be'ha'inyan de b'minim lachulu be'if, that this consultation that the Eibush has with us, to choose to have a Ratzon HaMuchlet, which is then going to be a source of Ratzon HaNela, which is then going to be a source of Ratzon HaGoli, and for then there's going to be Hashara, and there's a series of Gnuzah, and Malchus Dein Sof, and a Tzimtzum Arishin, and a Yerushalayim, and a Kav, and all the rest is Be'efen Sha'alos Ma'amin. Of course he's consulting with us, but he's consulting with us the way we're part of the Chakika, B'min Nimlach, B'Yisrael, all of B'Machshava, we're one with the Eibush. We don't exist. We're part of his thought. All of fun, the Eibush didn't anticipate. And the Shamas Yisrael She'yekayim B'Teiro Mitzvahs Lamata, there's going to be down until doing mitzvahs, and for Yachol the Eibush did anticipates that phenomena. Says the Rebbe Hadashim it's you some sham the way they're included in the Eibush's Hamloch, this consultation itself before higher than Natz Namuchot Batzmusei. Says the Rebbe Eina Ela Metzias Atmas. It's the Eibush himself. Says the Rebbe, which is Zeh, Kesazeh, not only Atmas. The Eibush takes this crown to himself, because this crown is really him. It's not his, it's him. And the Sheshayches Neshamas Yisrael, Sheshayich and Neshamas Yisrael is taka ours. We created it. So why does the Eibishter keep this crown? The Eibishter keeps this crown because it's his. Because the Madrega of a Yid that's able to save Hakdamas Nasal and Nishma is the way a Yid is in the Sheresh Hamokeh. And the Rebbe says the way the Sheresh Hamokeh doesn't exist. He is the Sheresh Hamokeh itself. He's the Eibishter himself. So the Eibishter keeps that crown. And the Rebbe continues and he breaks it down. So what do we have? Let's talk. At the beginning of this Maimon, the Rebbe brought the Chazal that the world does not have a kiyum until Yidden accept it. Yeah? Specifically, the kiyum that the world is going to have by Yidden accepting the Teda, you're connected to Teda, Aved, and Yosef, which is connected to three crowns. So Yidden accepting the Teda, which really means Teda, Aved, and Yosef, is connected to three crowns. Teda, Aved, and Yosef. So when you analyze what Yidden did to give the world a key, the word that ever earlier in the mind, I mean, to be specific, it's on top of page Shin Gimel. I just want to know where it's from. The Rebbe says the Iki Kiyam is a Makifa. He doesn't know what Makifa means, but that's a statement. Makifa means Kesef. It's divided up into three. And it's connected to this Chazal about the Shloisha Ksodim that the Yidden create, and the Malachim deliver, and one day Eibishter takes them. And other Shabbos, which is Nish. So the Rebbe, the Shaykh is the Gimel HaKsodim, you understand that there's three crowns. There's a Kesed of Akdamas Nasal, there's a Kesed of Nasal, there's a Kesed of Nishma. And like it says in the Gemara in the Medrash, the Eibishter gives us two Ksodim, the Ksodim of Nasal and Nishma and Nasal. And the Kesed of Akdamas Nasal and Nishma he keeps for the reasons explained in the previous paragraph. This is connected like Gimel Amudim Shalem Elam Ein B'Teira Veidik Mas Chasadim. These three crowns are connected to Teira Veidik Mas Chasadim. Now let's be direct. When I gave you the first sheet, I told you about the different possibilities. Here it is the finish. Tefillah is the Hakdamas. The crown of Tefillah is the highest. And this is a whole London because if you ever study Hasidus, sometimes it explains in Hasidus that Tefillah is lower than Teira. The Teda is called Karav the Shem Chol Teda Rechol Teda Chol Asher Klu Be'emet Ein Emes Ala Teda. But there's a Madreg of Tefillah which is higher than everything else. It says in Ein Beis, the second Chelik Ein Emes Ala Tefillah, because this is the Tefillah of the Tefillah's Nefesh, like Tefillah's Chanukah. Tefillah is the Kesed that the Eibishter keeps. Tefillah is our gift to him. Our Mesidas Faras, our Mesidas Nefesh, our Bina Nefesh Amach, our Akdamas Nasal Nishma, that's Tefillah. But then you have two crowns left, Torah and Gemach. Torah and Gemach are connected to Nasa and Nishma. So the Shaila becomes which is which. Al Pi Seichel, Torah should be Nishma, because Torah is a Nasa. And Mitzvah should be Nasa, because Mitzvah is Kabbalah said. But of course it's Torah the way it's enhanced by Akdamas Nasa and Nishma. And it's Mitzvah how it's said by Akdamas Nasa and Nishma. But I'm just thinking out loud. The Rebbe's not going to say specifically which is which. He's going to tell you that the Kesed that he keeps is Tefillah. And he's going to tell us that the two Ksodim that he gives us is Teirim Mach, but which is which he's not going to say. And by the way, if, underlined, the three Sugyas of Yeshid, Igulim, and Atzmos are going to be aligned with these three Ksodim, which is Teira, Chasadim, Tefillah, Nishma, Nasa. Damas Nasa Nishma, so Kav would be Teira, Mitzvahs would be Igulim, and Tefillah would be Atzmos. But I'm saying this totally off the record. Teira and Mitzvah is the ones they give back to us. And the Aveda, who can get a Kesser, should not be Yatzma. Aveda is a Kesser that he keeps for himself. The Rebbe explains why Teira, the Gamach and Teira, Mitzvahs, Teira, and Merchot means Teira and Mitzvahs, because Gamach Stock calls some Mitzvahs. Right in footnote 91 is Mitzvah to Tanya to Teira. Moreover, Teira and Gamach are both God coming into the world. Teira is Hashem coming into the world like a oil, like a big flame, and Mitzvah is Hashem coming into the world like a nail, like a series of smaller candles, but they're both in the direction from heaven to earth, like it says Neir Mitzvah, small little candles is Mitzvah, and Teira, the light of the sun is the Moshe for Teira. So Mitzvah and Kelim, Teira, Mitzvah are the Kelim, and Teira is the Teira. Of these two Ksanim he gives us, since these are lower levels, it relates to Yidden as Yidden are on lower levels. And when you're speaking about Yidden on lower levels, Yidden are Messiahs. We exist. And the Eibishter gives us the crown of Torah, the crown of Mitzvahs, as we exist as separate entities. And this, of course, is the crown of Nishma, the crown of Nasa. The crown of Adamas Nasa and Nishma, which is connected to us as we are one with Him, He keeps. The idea of davening Tefillah and Yonah, Allah, it's a set. It's an expiration and a bit to the higher than the highest will. This it keeps for himself. And of course, we would like to say that it keeps for himself because it's so precious. But in Haskalah words, since this phenomena of Akdamas Nasla Nishma has to do with us as we're one with Atzmus, as we're totally Baruch Baruch Hu. So since it comes from a place where we are nothing other than Him, He keeps it. Now, if I was in a different frame of mind, I would give a particular lecture on this idea of Tefillah, which is higher than Torah and Mitzvahs, even though the cloud Tefillah is lower than Torah and Mitzvahs. Here, Tefillah is higher than Torah and Mitzvahs. But I'm not in that frame of mind, so we're going to move on. Now, this is the Pshat also in the Mishnah Shlosh. A lot of Mary, remember the world stands on three things, on three makifim, as it says in the top of page Shin Gimel. Shamid Asa'elam Hu, the world's standing, Shanish Lamahakavon, is to realize its purpose, which is V'nim Shagalakud Ve'elah, God and its Gilelakud Ve'elah, God and its revealed in the world, says the Heilig Rebbe Sheyuz and Yifud Matan Teiro, plus Matan Teiro. What happens in Matan Teiro is that David Dossam show yourself the work of the Jewish people, but Kiyam and Teiro Mitzvahs and Teiro Mitzvahs. Until the Eibush gave Yidden the Teiro, the whole world was in a precarious state. When the Eibush gave Yidden the Teiro, and Yidden accepted the Teiro, and Yidden practiced the Teiro, so they're causing oimid. The world should be real. Now the Rebbe says a very edel called the Kavod. Im hayes, even though in the yesh never down lifnei, don't you think the Eibush knows? Huh? Don't you think the Eibush knows that on the year 24:48 on the 6th of season we're going to say Nasa V'Nishma? Don't you think the Eibush knew that we're going to agree? And yet, the Chazal say, Eretz Yalem is a cut, the world is trembling. If the Eibush knows what's going to be, what's the world afraid of? So the Rebbe answers, Ulamai Leike, Chazapel, by the Eibush, the intention is not actualized, so it's as if it already exists. The Rebbe Makom is this you have in the bottom of Tafshan on the Ches. Kiv and Tinis Abba, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Yisrael, Baruch Dir B'Tachtein, and the Eibish's interest is have a Dir B'Tachtein. If you've ever learned Tanya Perek Lam involved, you know. Dir B'Tachtein means in the Signin and Tachtein, in our point of view, because the Eibish's point of view is all in there's no Tachtein. I doubt that I've explained inside the Perek. Dir Dafke B'Tachtein, Dafke an actual home in the lowest world. In this world, from the perspective of this world, every potential is not actualized. Therefore, the primary sustenance of the world. Introduced by Matan Teira. Is talking the work of the Jewish people, but mitzvahs and learning Teira and doing mitzvahs. So there's a word here that there's a very big difference between chasa pale, madregas hakoyach and koyach mamish. This is what the Rebbe says in the Mammon of Tafshan Lamed Vav. This is the year we're learning Tafshan Lamed Ches. We're learning the Mammon of Tafshan Lamed Ches. This is a supplemental Maimed. We haven't yet learned the Maimed of Simchas Teda and Neach. We learned the Maimed of Yedus Kislev, but they all talk about the same idea. And even though by the Eibush there is no potential without actualization, there's something called the Tachtein. The way it's actualized at the level of Tachtein to the Tachtein. And until then, it's starting. He concludes the policy in Aksarim Shaka Matan Teira Dach. Crown has to do with Teira. It may be true that these crowns have to do with Yidden. Now he talks about all three of them in this light. The way they're born with Atzma. So Shomheim Lamal Teira, which is higher than the Teira. Like it says in the Medrash Chapter and Sheikh Al Kod Melachol Dobagam the Teira. It's the famous term of Veliyah. The Yidden of a Shed is higher than Teira. The Shade is higher than Teira is hidden from us. The way we come down into this world, we're lower than Teira, and we need the Teira, fast, Kishin, Eskashra, and Dabidah, Yisrael, Be'eraisa, Be'eraisa, it may be true that in our Shadish we're higher than Teira, but down here we're lower than Teira. Just like I said on the previous page about the Neshamas and Malachim, now we're saying about the Neshamas and Teira. Mishnah's Baal, but Mishnah, it said in the previous Maimorim, which we learned last year at this time, truest time, it's Shin Ayin Tes. We learned the two Maimorim Chamisha, Kinyan and Teira, Kinyan Echad, there's two Maimorim. The Rebbe said twice Chamisha Kinyan. Now I didn't look them over, I didn't prepare them now. But from last year I remember that the first of the two Maimorim Chamisha Kinyanim speaks the Mile of Teira, Teira Kinyan Echad. And the second Maimah Chamisha Kinyan speaks about Yisrael Kinyan Echad, that Yidden have even a higher Shadish than the Teira. Shabbat Bechinas Kinyan Echad, Aydesh Yisrael Bechinas Kinyan Echad. First there's Yidden and then there's Teira. Says the Rebbe Makomakim, nevertheless, it's all potential, it's all hidden. To reveal and actualize the Maila of Yisrael Kinyan Echad, you have to have Teira Kinyan Echad. Gam Yisrael Shalom Maila B'yat Teira, although Yidden's source is higher than Teira, or said in other words, the way Yidden are higher than the Teira, Tzricham Teira Daf Yidden Teira. You know why? Because when they come into a goof, it's hell of a Kamesha, when they get in the of a goof. Just like we understand about a soul and about a she'im, of course, the soul, the source of the body is higher than the source of the soul. To reveal what's advantageous about the body, you need the neshama. And the same is true Eris and Kalim. Of course, they're not, right? The Shadish of Kalim is higher than the Shoresh of it. Kalim Moshe Shenatfud and Eris on Moshe Shenmoy, which is lower. To reveal Ma'asa Kalim, you have to have oil. The Neshama reveals Ma'asa Guf, oil reveals Ma'asa Kalim, and Teira reveals Ma'asa Yisrael. It may be true that Yidden's source is higher than the Teira. His galus, milas, and neshama, for the neshama's mouth to be revealed. That's to be revealed down here. It's idea Teira Daf. So l'chayda, you have to say that save kol save, even the keser ashlishi has to come downstairs, down to the door. That's what these drugs are connected about on Teira, because they're happening in this world, and that's the concept of Matan Teira. So even though all three crowns have a connection to the Jewish people, the revelation of these crowns is a day Matan Teira. That's the Matan Teira. Now I want to ask a question. The Tavshei Beit Rebbe said this Maimer. It's a bomb, right? It's a bomb. Yeah? Not every Maimer of the Rebbe is such a bomb. What explanation would there be for why the Rebbe would choose, on one occasion to say this? The Rebbe doesn't just skip the Tender and Zayin. He says the whole thing. This is 13 pages. Tender and Zayin is much longer, I think. But the Rebbe says each point of Tender and Kitzur, the Pirut, right? He removes all doubt. How do we understand how the Rebbe chose, especially in the earlier years, to say Maimorim like this? In the later years, we didn't see such. What's true is that in the later years, the Rebbe said Maimorim more often. But I've often looked at these Maimorim and asked myself a simple question: how did any person hear them, absorb them, remember them, and give them back? Okay, a guten Abend. Tonight at 11 is a Fabrenk, and tomorrow is a new Maimer. Mitzvah around noon. There'll be a Maimer from Tavshin Lamed Ches. I think it's Moshe Kibbutz Teira Messina Tavshin Lamed Ches. I'll tell you now. Maimer right here. It's the next Maimer in the Sefer from 1978. This is the Maimer. This is our year in Mizal. And the next Maimer is Moshe Kibbutz Teira Messina. Yeah. It's from Shabbos Nasa Yud Beis Sivan, which is today is Yud Beis Sivan. Shabbos will be Yud Aleph Sivan. We're going to learn Yud Beis Sivan.